So my next guest says that President Trump is acting like a dictator for telling the DOJ to look into the reports of surveillance of his campaign. Democratic Congressman Eric Swalwell joins me now. Congressman, good to have you with us tonight.
Hey, Martha,
thanks for being here. Yeah, it's good to have you back. I appreciate it. One of the questions that I have, when James Clapper goes out and talks about all the concerns that they had, that there were contacts, and he now says that he's absolutely positive that the Russians somehow swung the U.S. election. Why did they not? Because it was considered at one point. Andrew McCabe was in the room. James Comey was in the room, according to these reports. Why did they not do what they call a defensive briefing? If they were so concerned about the future of the election, why didn't they get in touch with the campaign and say, look, we think they're reaching out to your folks?
I'm not suggesting, Martha, that they did everything right, and that's why I've called for an independent commission. I wrote legislation. Republicans support that so that we can tell the American people in part whether the government response was adequate. But I completely agree that there were many red flags that were missed. And just to put this in context, though, Donald Trump was also telling the American people that the election was going to be rigged, and intelligence officials have acknowledged to Congress that played into their decision as to whether to tell the American people what the Russians were doing, because they didn't want to play into that false narrative Donald Trump was peddling. I don't think that was right. I think that was the wrong call on the Obama administration.
Well, they may have. If Hillary Clinton, who says that she believes that the Russians stole the election from her, then she must be pretty angry at the intelligence agencies. Because if they had stepped in and done what they, perhaps should have done, wouldn't this have gone differently? It also raised the question. James Comey said he wanted to share the dossier with the president because he was genuinely concerned that it could be used as some form of compromise. Why did that not apply earlier in the process? If they were so concerned that the Russians had something over this campaign or over this candidate, it makes no sense that they wouldn't have briefed them.
I agree.
All right, so why do you think they didn't?
Again, I don't know. I think an independent commission, though, would have told the American people that. I don't think it's too late to do that. September 11th, commission was able to answer a lot of questions like this. That commission was not put in place on September 12th. It took a year after the attack, so there's still time.
Well, here's what we do know. James Comey has said that they were convinced that Hillary Clinton was going to win. So if they're convinced that Hillary Clinton's going to win, they're talking about the investigation into her quite often during the course of this time. And yet they don't talk to the Trump campaign about what they're concerned about in that campaign. Is it possibly because they want to keep a window open to that campaign? They've got some intelligence coming out of that campaign because they haven't made them aware of the full situation. And perhaps that might be the reason, do you think, that they didn't want to be transparent with the head of that campaign?
No, there are investigative tactics that the FBI will use to learn more about what an enemy is doing as it infiltrates either an organization, a political candidate, et cetera. That may have been what was going on here. If they wanted to tilt the election toward Hillary Clinton, they would have revealed that this investigation was underway when it was underway. That never came out, and I think that shows that they may have made a bad decision by not telling the Trump campaign.
But don't you think they should answer for
briefing.
that? Don't you think that there needs to be some kind of investigation
Absolutely.
into how they handled this?
That's why I wrote the bill to have an independent commission. Absolutely.
All right. So in terms of what I would imagine would like to be in that room during this meeting tomorrow.
Well, for tomorrow, yes, because I want to make sure that if anything comes out of that meeting, that it is accurately told to the American people. And we've seen from Chairman Nunes in the past, whether it was his unmasking claims or the memo that they wrote, that there's been a distortion. So to protect against a perversion of the evidence, yes, Democrats should be invited.
All right. Let me ask you this. Why do you think James Clapper is now certain that the Russians were able to throw the election, and before, when he was actually the DNI, he wasn't certain?
Well, I'm not certain that that's the case. I'm certain they attacked us. They weaponized social media. They tried to help Donald Trump. Unless we had a full-scale independent investigation, we couldn't answer that question. But I think it's a question that Republicans and Democrats would want to know the answer to and should push to know the answer to.
So you don't think there was any collusion then?
No, I do think there's evidence of collusion. Evidence is not a conclusion. But what we should do is let Bob Mueller tell us criminally whether there was collusion, which is conspiracy to defraud the United States. All
right, I understand what you're saying. But you, from what you're saying, as I understand it, you think that it was a mistake for James Clapper and Jim Comey not to have given some sort of briefing about what they were seeing at the time to the campaign.
I want to know why they didn't. I think
me too.
the
Good
American
question.
people should know.
All right. Thank you very much, Eric Swalwell.
My pleasure.
Good to have you here tonight.